CM Punk is one of the most controversial figures in all of pro wrestling. Even though Punk is beloved by fans and he's managed to resonate with them, the same can't be said for his peers. Over his wrestling career and specifically during his time in WWE and AEW, Punk has made some enemies out of some of the top talent in the world. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 wrestlers who despise CM Punk. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out Wrestlelamia.co.uk and an non-wrestling channel, Incredible. Number 10. Eddie Kingston. One of CM Punk's most notable rivalries since joining AEW was his 2021 feud with Eddie Kingston. The two would take several personal shots towards each other, and fans assumed that this was just both men working an angle, but that wasn't the case. According to Kingston, the hatred is completely legitimate, and he's never going to remotely like Punk as a human being. Kingston would discuss his dislike for Punk during an interview with Inside the Ropes, as Kingston stated, No, there's no like there. He doesn't like me, I don't like him, and I don't think we'll ever like each other. I'm just being honest with you. We're never gonna see eye to eye, and I'm not a very forgiving person. I'm a Catholic, and I believe that it's God's problem, forgiving people. So no, I have no desire to be friends with him, and he has no desire to be friends with me. We just do not like each other, and that's it. Number 9. Hornswoggle. During CM Punk's time in WWE, one of his closest friends was Hornswoggle. The two were insanely tight and would even become traveling buddies. However, when Punk left WWE in 2014, the established friendship seemed to break down. According to Hornswoggle, Punk decided to cut the friendship off when Hornswoggle asked Punk for the number of a mutual friend. Hornswoggle would share this story during a shoot interview, and you can even see how hurt Hornswoggle was by the actions of his former friend. Now, it goes without saying that this is one of the most ridiculous reasons that anyone has ever cut ties with a friend, and highlights how petty Punk can truly be. Number 8. Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens is one of the most popular stars in every wrestling locker room. Owens is friends with everyone up and down the roster, yet the only wrestler that seems to have a negative opinion of him is CM Punk. According to Conan and his podcast producer Joe Feeney, the relationship between the two broke down when both men were in Ring of Honor. Feeney revealed they were in Ring of Honor at the same time, and Punk was like one of the locker room leaders there. He was a head trainer and all that. He had a lot of sway and stroke. Owens was trying to get in. He did CZW and some Canadian indies and stuff like that, but much like we talked about with Eddie Kingston, Punk didn't like Owens for the shape he was in and that Kevin Owens would wrestle in a t-shirt. He kind of wanted him to wrestle in a singlet, and word got back to Kevin, so he wrestled a match in a singlet. It was against Vordell Walker, and the match wasn't good according to Owens, and then he came back to the locker room and said jokingly to Punk, "Are you happy now?" Or something, and Punk got in his face. The issues between the two would seemingly be confirmed in September 2022, as following Punk's notable outburst at the AEW All Out press conference, Kevin Owens would tweet out a picture of him and Stone Cold Steve Austin. This was an image from their main event showdown at Wrestlemania, and fans believe this to be a direct shot to Punk, who's been very bitter over the fact that he never got to main event WrestleMania. Number 7. The Elite. The All Out 2022 press conference featured CM Punk at his very worst. Punk would take shots at various people, including Adam Page and 3 AEW executives. The AEW executives in question happened to be the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. The comments Punk made were as follows: "What did I ever do in this world to deserve an empty-headed effing dumb F like Hangman Adam Page to go out on national television and effing go into business for himself? For what? What did I ever do? Didn't do a goddamn thing." It's not Tony Khan's position to make it very effing clear. There's people who call themselves EVPs that should have effing known better. This shit was none of their business. I understand sticking up for your friends, but I effing get it. I stuck up for that guy more than anybody, okay? I paid his bills until I didn't, and it was my decision not to. Now, the Elite weren't pleased with Punk's unflattering comments, and this actually led to a physical backstage confrontation taking place, and Punk reportedly even took a swing at Matt Jackson. Number 6. Hangman Adam Page. The issues between Punk and Hangman Adam Page began on the road to their world title match at Double or Nothing 2022. It was believed that Page went into business for himself during a promo exchange and said something Punk wasn't comfortable with. This led to Punk deciding that Page wasn't going to be on his Christmas card list, and Punk would seemingly develop a hatred for Page. Punk would then randomly call out Page on Dynamite a few months later, and this was a completely unplanned segment, and Punk only did it to extract some revenge on Page. Page is universally liked in the AEW locker room, and Punk seems to be the only one in question that has an issue with him. Evidently, this says a lot more about Punk than it does about Hangman Adam Page. Number 5. AJ Styles. It's unclear when exactly the issues between Punk and AJ Styles began. The two have never been friends, and this appears to be mainly down to the difference in their political and social beliefs. During a 2020 Twitch stream, a fan asked Styles what he would think about the possibility of facing Punk in a dream match. Now, this is when Styles revealed that he wasn't a fan of Punk and that he had no interest whatsoever in facing him. Styles is another wrestler who is really well liked by his peers, so it seems strange that Punk has a problem with the Phenomenal One. Number 4. The Undertaker. Now, The Undertaker was the established locker room leader for much of his WWE career, but there were certain wrestlers that got on his wrong side, and one of them was CM Punk back in 2009. When Punk was world champion, the dead man took exception to the way that Punk was dressing. The dead man believed that the world champion should dress in a certain manner, and Punk was representing the company poorly. This ultimately led to The Undertaker using his backstage influence to have Punk drop the world title to him at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Whilst the relationship between the two seemed to be on the mend when the two worked together in WrestleMania 29, Punk's later comments in relation to not being thrilled to work with Taker at WrestleMania likely wouldn't have sat well with the Hall of Famer. Number 3. Ryback. Now, it's no secret that CM Punk and Ryback loathe each other. When the two worked together a decade ago, Ryback was notoriously reckless with Punk, and Punk gradually began to despise working with WWE's hot prospect. Punk would even confront Ryback backstage as he believed that Ryback had a personal vendetta against him and he was hurting him deliberately. The two would once again feud in 2013, and Punk once again hated his time working with him. Punk would even claim that working with Ryback took years off his life. During the infamous podcast appearance on Cabana's show, Punk would claim that Ryback was personally one of the reasons that he was so miserable in WWE. Ryback is always prone to taking shots at Punk via social media, as for instance in the summer of 2022 when Punk announced to the AEW audience that he had suffered an injury, Ryback would simply tweet out 2 words, "Karma rules," even though that makes 0 sense. Number 2. Triple H. The hatred between Punk and Triple H is well documented, and it truly escalated in 2011. Coming out of the summer of Punk, Punk was the hottest star in all of wrestling. He would then face Triple H at the Night of Champions pay-per-view, and Punk would abruptly lose. This was the wrong decision at the time, and it definitely helped hinder Punk's position as a top star. Triple H reportedly believed that Punk had a terrible attitude and didn't deserve a main event placement in WWE. But Punk had a lot of resentment following the loss, and this continued for several years. When the creative plans began for Punk to wrestle Triple H at WrestleMania 30, Punk was so dissatisfied with the idea of working with the game that he walked out of the company never to return. Punk would then make several negative comments towards Triple H during a number of public interviews, and it was clear that there was no repairing this damaged relationship. And number 1. Colt Cabana. At one point in time, CM Punk and Colt Cabana were inseparable. However, a difficult legal battle tore their friendship apart, as following Punk's appearance on Cabana's podcast in 2014, WWE Dr. Chris Amann brought a lawsuit against Punk and Cabana for disparaging comments made against him. The lawsuit wouldn't go in favor of Amann, but it would ultimately destroy the friendship between Punk and Cabana. Both men filed lawsuits against each other for the way the lawsuit was handled, and Cabana claimed that Punk offered to pay Cabana's legal fees during the Amann lawsuit, and that he and Punk had a verbal contract in place. In 2019, Punk took to Twitter to comment on the lawsuit, and Punk would claim that Cabana is greedy and he tried to extort him. Both lawsuits were settled and dismissed in September 2019, and the settlement involved no financial compensation for either man. Following Punk's return to wrestling, Punk and Cabana were in AEW simultaneously, and there were reportedly no issues between them, but that is until Cabana was reportedly quietly moved to Ring of Honor, seemingly keeping him away from Punk indefinitely. But there you have it folks, 10 wrestlers who despise CM Punk. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.